And brothers, the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
This is no time to play, to dream, to drift. We have hard work to do and loads to lift. Shun not the struggle, for the struggle, I tell you, is the gift. Be strong. Brothers and sisters, we are glad to be here with you on this precious Lord's Day. I have enjoyed the expressions of faith, love, and connectivity to God's created order. I've also enjoyed the artful expressions and the songs from the young people of OSA, and I'm honored to speak today and thankful for Father Aiden, Laurentine Brazil, and all that she and the team have done to prepare for us on this day. Thank you for the introduction outside, and I was trying to be poised, but I found myself reaching for my iPhone to take pictures of all of the beauty and to see the whole world in God's hand. I want to start today with a comment about my trek founding this Green the Church campaign. We are on our way next week to St. Louis, Missouri for our 6th annual Green the Church campaign, which is now the largest gathering of African-American faith leaders on the issue of sustainability and environmentalism. But in 2009, while living in Denver, Colorado, I became a Green for All Fellow with Mr. Van Jones, who's now a commentator on CNN. And he and that organization were doing great work to train and catalyze inner city and rural community activists to do environmental justice work. For years, I had pondered, as we look at the civil rights movement, what would be the large umbrella movement of my generation. I felt that it was articulated: Van Jones' green job economy. At any rate, the fellows and I were charged to do projects in our communities around the country, but there were so many of us with good ideas that Green for All could not possibly promote all of our work individually. They could only go as far as teaching and funding us to do work on our own. However, in 2010, when I started Green the Church, Green for All helped me. I presented the idea of Green the Church to Mr. Julian McQueen, who managed the fellows, and Julian went further than anyone in his position previously had. And because he went further and spoke on my behalf, it made the whole difference in my life and in my ministry. This morning, for a Baptist 10 minutes, I like to talk from this notion: further for others. Further for others. Can anyone else testify this morning that you are where you are today, doing the things that the Almighty allows you to do because someone in your life went further. Perhaps you were at your wit's end, but you had a teacher or a school instructor who studied with you, who tutored with you, who went further. Perhaps it took you a while to learn how to treat your significant other sweetly. But thank God, someone was patient with you and loved you when you did not know how to reciprocate that love. I'm saying perhaps you are still in relationship today because someone was patient enough to go further. Maybe there was a time when your parent took an extra job to get for you some things, not that you needed, but some things that you wanted. Is anyone thankful today? Is anyone present for life and living today because someone else went further for you? This is a beautiful and poignant text in the book of Luke. The rich man and Lazarus. As we come into the realm of our text for the morning, we find a rich man that had all of the trappings of life. He wore the royal robes. He had a large family and perhaps an exquisite home. However, the home was probably on San Pablo Avenue, and the city had a great homelessness crisis. Perhaps he moved through life doing good in the society that he could see. But perhaps there were people in his surroundings that were not in his dimension, whose humanity was more difficult to detect. Among them was this poor beggar named Lazarus. Note that he was not just some dope fiend, he was Lazarus. He was not just another crackhead, he was Lazarus. Not just somebody who did not have the discipline like they suggested to us in 1987 at Oakland High School to just say no. But the Bible says that this was Lazarus. You see, he was some mother's son. Lazarus, perhaps some sister's baby brother. He was Lazarus. Perhaps someone who, like these children, once stood up in synagogue and read from the scroll. This was Lazarus, a part of the human family, someone known by God. The Bible says that he sat at the gate longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. That his body, yes, was filled with sores, and that even the dogs came and licked his sore, ravished body. The rich man saw him, but all of Lazarus' life, the rich man never went further. The story then transitions, goes on to say that Lazarus died and went to sleep in the bosom of Abraham. And then, of course, the rich man died, because all of us must one day transition from life to life. But he went instead to Hades. I'm saying that in hell he lifted up his eyes. But across the way, he saw Abraham and Lazarus in his bosom. He said, "Father Abraham, send Lazarus to dip his finger in the water. Come and cool my tongue, because I'm tormented in these flames." Abraham said, "Sir, I cannot do it. There is a great chasm between me and you, and this is as far as I can come to you." The rich man said, "Well, okay, then send Lazarus from the dead to tell my brothers, don't come here." And Abraham said, "No, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." Father Abraham could not go any further. The reality and the conclusion of this text may seem disheartening to some. You see, Lazarus was never helped in life. And the rich man was never helped in death. Justice decrees that oftentimes we can only go so far and no farther. Oh, but I thank God on this Earth Day celebration for the grace of God. I said, I thank God today for the power of God's love. I thank God for the mercy which is at the epicenter of the Christian faith. I thank God for Jesus today because Jesus always goes further. First Peter 3:18 and 19 says, "For Christ also suffered once for sin, the righteousness for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits." Abraham, you see, was restricted in the love that he could show because Jesus, after he was crucified, descended into hell and set the captives free. Jesus went further. The hymn writer said, "Love lifted me. Love lifted me when nothing else could help. Love lifted me." Brothers and sisters, the love of Jesus always beckons us to go further for others. In this life, we want to take responsibility, not only for ourselves and our families, but also for others. Some may ask the question, why is the plight of others my responsibility? Well, it is the responsibility of the believer, those who have been saved by grace, to offer the grace of God to others. It was the rich man's responsibility to take care of his 5 brothers and his family. But it was also his responsibility to take care of the man who begged at the gate of his home. He may not have acknowledged this responsibility, but the word tells us that even the dogs licked the man's wounds. Now, at first, that sounded to me as an insult to injury. But when I thought about it, I noted that dog saliva contains chemicals that are antibacterial, and that saliva is never a cause of infection, but rather dog saliva can be a healing mechanism. So when I read the text, it tells me that although the rich man would not help, and although others in society would not help, that at that moment the dog saw Lazarus' plight, and the dog recognized him as a sentient being, and the dog went further and licked his wounds for the purpose of healing his body. If the dogs can go further, I'm a cat man. But if the dogs can go further for the poor, then why can't we? Laudato Si', the encyclical on climate change and inequality by Pope Francis, states that developed nations are morally obligated to assist developing nations in combating the climate change crisis. Poor nations, the pontiff says, are ill prepared